In the forgotten corners of Florence, where ivy chokes ancient walls and silence hangs heavy, stood the studio of a painter named Vittorio Morelli. Once they called him a genius. Now they only whisper his name in fear. His paintings, they said, were alive. The eyes of his portraits didn't just look at you. They followed you, not with pigment, but with a chilling, insatiable hunger. Vittorio's obsession was realism. He yearned to capture not just the physical form, but the very soul of his subjects. Yet, with every stroke of his brush, his work felt hollow, lifeless. He would spend weeks on a single eye, a curve of a lip, but the spark, the essence, was always missing. He was a master of his craft, yet a failure in his own eyes, teetering on the edge of madness. Then came the night that changed everything. Frustrated and exhausted, he hurled a palette knife across the studio. It shattered a pane of glass, and as he cleaned up the mess, a sharp shard sliced open his hand. A single, perfect drop of his own blood fell onto a half-finished portrait, landing right on the cheek of a young woman. The color that bloomed across the canvas was unlike any paint he had ever mixed. It was deep, warm, and undeniably human. A vibrant, living crimson that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. From that moment on, his art was reborn. He abandoned his old paints, embracing his dark, new medium. The faces he painted were no longer just images. They were presences. Under the soft flicker of candlelight, their skin seemed to faintly glow, their chests rising and falling with imperceptible breaths. His fame exploded. Collectors from Paris, London, and Vienna journeyed to Florence, all desperate to own a Morelli original. They spoke of the paintings in hushed, reverent tones, of the unsettling connection they felt when gazing into the canvas. But as Vittorio's star rose, so did the dark rumors that swirled around him. People who sat for him, vibrant and full of life, would vanish without a trace just days after their portrait was complete. A wealthy merchant, a celebrated poet, a young duchessal, immortalized on canvas, then erased from the world. Whispers grew louder, linking the painter to the disappearances. But with no evidence, the authorities were powerless. Eventually, the whispers became too loud to ignore. The Florentine police, led by a weary inspector, finally raided Vittorio's studio. The air inside was thick and metallic, the scent of iron clinging to the heavy velvet curtains. They found no sign of Vittorio, nor any of his missing subjects. What they did find were dozens of portraits, hanging on every wall, their eyes gleaming in the lantern light. They were masterpieces of realism, so lifelike they seemed to breathe. As the inspector walked past a portrait of a woman with sorrowful eyes, he swore he heard it whisper his name. The sound was like dry leaves skittering across cobblestones, and it froze the blood in his veins. They searched the studio from top to bottom. No bodies were ever found. The only evidence left behind were dark, metallic stains that had seeped into the floorboards beneath the easels, long since dried. Years passed, and the mystery of Vittorio Morelli faded into legend. The remaining collection of his work was housed in a grand Florentine gallery, a morbid attraction for the curious and the brave. One moonless night, the gallery burned to the ground. The fire was intense, inexplicable, and left nothing but ash. But witnesses who saw the inferno from a distance told a terrifying story. They claimed that as the flames consumed the building, the faces inside the paintings began to scream. Not the sound of burning canvas, but the agonized human cries of souls trapped in a fiery prison. And even today, they say that if you walk through the right alley in Florence when the moon is full, you might see it, a single window, high up in an old tower, glowing with a faint crimson light. It looks as if someone is still painting by candlelight, and if you get close enough, you might catch a familiar scent on the night air, the unmistakable smell of fresh iron. Thank you so much for joining me on this chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next descent into the darkness. Until next time, stay curious.